the relationship's very difficult, isn't it, within that family? And I think, yes, it would be a lot easier if Meghan weren't there. Is that a moment for Harry and William to kind of, you know, be the big boys and just put all the stuff to one side? That probably tells you what you need to know about Meghan's thoughts about the UK and what a terrible time she had when she was here.
Hello, I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and welcome to our show, Royal Exclusive. Today we will be discussing the return of the King. It was great to see him back. The return of the prodigal son, but does anyone want to see him back? And everything in between. To delve into all this and more is ITV's Royal Editor, Chris Shipp. Hello, Chris, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here, thank you very much.
It feels weird calling you Chris Shipp because I know you were Shippers.
Shippy, Shippy, Shippers, yeah, anything is...
We'll keep it professional, no nicknames
okay,
today.
yes, Matthew.
Yeah. Now, positive week this week. We were both at the hospital where we saw the return of the King. We've been waiting for this for a while. I mean, we've both seen the King about over the last couple of years, particularly after the coronation. We were both there. What did it feel like for you? Was it good to see him back?
There did feel like there was something different. Did I mean, I kind of feel like we've seen quite a lot of the King in recent weeks. Buckingham Palace have been careful to make sure he's still being seen to be doing work. Remember that video of him meeting Rishi Sunak and all the rest of it. But we haven't actually seen him doing any work kind of outside palace walls. And of course, this was a big event because it was the first public one. I don't know what you thought, but I kind of thought he looked a bit different, particularly I thought when he was meeting the patients. It was, I mean, the story for me was cancer patient meets cancer patients. And you could kind of feel that kind of understanding. I think they all, I mean, I spoke to one of the patients afterwards who met him, and they all had a kind of connection, didn't they, that clearly he wouldn't have had before, even though he's been, you know, working and helping cancer charities for many years.
It's a different way of being a monarch. That's what I was when I was watching the King in the hospital, because he was much more touchy-feely. We haven't really seen that. You know, the late Queen was obviously wonderful and she had, you know, so many attributes, but she wasn't as touchy-feely as King Charles. He really bonded with these cancer patients. As you say, they had conversations, didn't they? They talked about their care and their treatment, and the King opened up a bit about his treatment. Are we seeing the King excel? Are we seeing a kind of new style of being a king? I
think we are a little bit. It's kind of like an augmentation of where we were before. Because a lot of people said to me, you know, just after accession, oh my goodness, you know, here's the King and he's like touching everyone's hands and going up for everybody. Because we were used to, you know, the late Queen who didn't do that. She got out of the car. You know, she had that sort of mystique around her. She didn't go up to crowds and start hugging them in the way that sometimes happens with Charles and Camilla. But yes, I think that there was definitely something different. And as you rightly pointed out, when he kind of grabbed hold of their hands, not in a sort of formal way, but he grabbed hold of the patient's hands at the end as if to say, good luck. I hope you're going to get through this. You know, we're all in this battle together. And interestingly, there was one moment when he was walking down a corridor with his entourage. I say entourage, mostly it's other medics and all the media behind him that swoop along in a big group, isn't it? But and they stopped to chat to someone who was clearly having surgery. He had a surgical gown on. There was some medical staff around him. And he said, I appreciate what you're doing. We're all in this together, he said. And what he meant by I appreciate what you're doing was, thanks for sharing your cancer diagnosis and showing that you can, for some people, you can go back to work even though you're still having cancer treatment. And I think that's the thing to remember. It's not over for the King. You know, I think some people might think, oh, he's better now, that's it. But he's not. He's still got cancer and he's still having cancer treatment. And yet his doctors have allowed him to come back out and see members of the public again.
Well, the palace are actually at pains to say that going back to work is not the right thing to do for everybody who has cancer, but the King has chosen, you know, to do it because he wants to be seen. But I thought it was interesting that he did actually say that he was, as you pointed out there, he's still having treatment. He spoke to one of the patients and said, well, I've got treatment this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of detail you never get out of the palace, like when is he having his treatment? They never tell you that kind of thing. You know, we are presuming he's been having chemotherapy. We don't know if he's still having it now. And he was coming back, well, you know, the early days of the cancer diagnosis, he was spending time in Sandringham, wasn't he? Then coming back on a Tuesday or Wednesday to have his treatment, or he'd be at Highgrove and then come back for the Tuesday or Wednesday as well. And this happened on a Tuesday, and he said to the patient, yes, I've got my treatment this afternoon. And everyone clearly was listening out for those little conversations that he was having. We ended up having to subtitle it all because you could barely hear it. And we listened to it about 96,000 times just to get the right words. But a couple of those that stood out was, you know, he would sit down and ask people how they are, but in turn, they'd ask him, how are you? You know, and his stock response was, I'm okay, thank you, or I'm doing okay. But we also heard him say, it's a shock, isn't it, when they tell you? And clearly he had that shock back at the beginning of the year, in late January, early February, after his prostate operation, and then he got told that they'd found the cancer.
I don't wish to sound a sycophant, okay? You know, we can get accused of the press of being overly kind to the royal family, but I'm really impressed personally by the king. I was concerned when he was crowned. Would his reign be defined by the row with Harry? Would he be compared to his mother? And then when he had these illnesses, would it be would it be characterised by a struggle with cancer, or maybe finishing too early? Are you impressed with how the king and the palace have dealt with his cancer diagnosis and his comeback? Him personally as well, the king. Are you impressed with what he's doing?
God, there's a lot in there, isn't there? Because it's like summing up the last 18 months. I think the transition was really smooth, and I think his reign started with a lot of people having sympathy for him because he just lost his mother, who was this, very, very well-respected figure, not just in this country, but around the world. But that transition was very smooth. And I kind of feel like now, and you don't really want to be in this position necessarily, but people feel very sorry for him. He was just getting into his stride as monarch after a year and a bit, and then hit first with the prostate and then the cancer diagnosis. So I think there's a lot of sympathy for him out there at the moment, and they can see that he's still trying to sort of crack on. And we know, we've heard from palace people inside the palace, he's very frustrated. He's been very frustrated that he can't get out and do things, because the thing he likes about his job the most is meeting people, is hearing about what's right and what's wrong and how he might be able to make a difference. He's a man, absolutely consumed with the ambition to make a difference, and I think he's felt very frustrated being stuck behind palace walls. Yes, he's done the red boxes. Yes, he's met the Prime Minister. Yes, he can do the odd audience here and there. But there's nothing quite like what we saw the other day. It was getting out and meeting patients. And fittingly, they chose a cancer treatment centre to do it.
Well, this could be the making of him. This could define his legacy, really, or define the rest of his reign. This successfully, we don't know specifically how the treatment, they say it's positive, so we can't really delve into whether it's been successful or whatever. But, this is a real kind of, for me, it's like a change of path. You could say goodbye to all the stress and the traumas that have happened with the family relationships and stuff like that, and really go down a more positive path to his legacy.
I think people are seeing him in a new light, and change is always difficult. And we were... Goodness me, we were used to having a queen for 70 years, like as old as I am, she even predated me.
Well, she was indestructible,
exactly,
wasn't she? And then we all suddenly had a king that possibly was a bit
And people thought was a bit too outspoken, or they didn't necessarily agree with some of his ideas on this, that or the other. And unlike his mother, we kind of know what he thinks about the environment and climate change and historic buildings and traditional crafts and all those things that he's been speaking about all these years, where his mother was a kind of blank canvas, and you could sort of, whoever you were in this country, you could paint your own canvas to suit you. That's who the Queen was, and one of her strengths. But I think this is a moment for him, and actually I think it's been amazing in terms of her public profile for Camilla as well, because she's kind of been battling on over these past few months on her own. She did Commonwealth Day service on her own. She did that Maundy Thursday service at Worcester Cathedral on her own. And I mean, who would have thought this 30 years ago? Yeah. She's kind of single-handedly been keeping the royal show on the road, particularly with all the health issues we've had going on at Kensington Palace with William and Kate.
Don't go anywhere, because there is so much more coming up in the rest of the show. Here's a taste.
Will William and Kate put them up in one of their spare rooms? Highly unlikely, I think we'd all agree. You kind of think he would see his dad, wouldn't you, given everything that's going on? They got booed. A lot of people said on Twitter, no, you're making it up, you royal correspondents are, fabricating the story. Absolutely not.
What do you think we can expect from the King the rest of the summer or the rest of the spring and summer? Is there any big events that you're looking forward to seeing him, or is there any concerns that you have?
Well, interestingly, the only thing we know for sure that he's going to do is the incoming state visit of the Emperor and Empress of Japan. That's the only thing they've confirmed, and everything else is still TBC, to be signed off by his doctors. That said, I think it's. Don't you think he's pretty much going to turn up at Royal Ascot and he's pretty much going to go to his own birthday parade, trooping the colour? You can't really have trooping the colour, the birthday parade for the monarch when the monarch's not there. Now, will they have to make changes? Like, he might not be able to go on a horse, he might just do it from the balcony, but whatever way, he will take part in trooping the colour. I'm absolutely sure of it. So I think those big events, he will go to Royal Ascot as well. He's got a love of horses, not as well known as his mother's was, but of course all of her horses are now his, and they had that win last year at Ascot as well. So I think he'll probably go there as well. And then it's all about what can he do? You know, what is going, not just about meeting the public, because again, when you have cancer, it's all about your lower levels of immunity when you have chemotherapy, but also just about, are we going to, you know, is there a risk we're going to push him too hard, given that he's having this treatment still? We must remember that he's still having treatment. He's still got cancer. He's not out of the woods. And everyone's wishing him well, but it's a very uncertain time when you get cancer at age 75. So
it's interesting you say that, because there was an event this week at Buckingham Palace where the Queen met lots of people that have been working to kind of prevent sexual violence, a campaign that we know that she's been working on for over a decade.
Done amazingly well with, isn't she? Yeah.
And she, she said a comment to one of the charity workers there. She said that, you know, that the King had actually was thrilled to be back. But that she had to kind of, kind of hold him back a little bit. You know, there is a case that the King, as you say, he must be frustrated, and he must be looking at trooping. He must be looking at Ascot D-Day. But there must be people in the palace kind of saying, well, hang on, we've only got one king. We need to properly plan. Cancer isn't over, and let's just take one step at a time.
You've got to recalibrate the whole programme, really. Do you remember when, actually, I think it was you guys at The Sun who put on a party for the King for his 70th birthday? I remember being outside there. I think he was carrying a bag with like a 70 balloon in it as well. And I said, is that, you're 70 now, are you going to slow down? And he said something along the lines of, well, there might be a little bit of slowing down. And Camilla next to him says, absolutely no chance at all, because that's who he is. He's a workaholic. He's the guy that gets involved in the colours of the paint on the walls at Dumfries House. They won't choose the paint until he's signed it off. That's just one of his homes. And I just think he's a man who likes to get involved in the granular detail of everything. And that's going to be the biggest problem for his doctors, is holding him back, especially now that he can go and see members of the public as well. I mean, look, you've got the Windsor Horse Show this weekend. That was always a private visit for the late Queen as well. But, I mean, it's highly likely that he's going to turn up at that as well. So.
One thing that might be in his diary, but we're not sure yet, we're waiting to find out next week, is obviously the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry. He's coming back. He's made it clear he's returning to the UK for a couple of days. Why is he coming, Chris? Why is he coming back this week? He's not a working royal. Why is he here?
So there's a big event at St Paul's Cathedral, which is to mark the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. I think anyone who's ever been, you've been to them, I've been to 3 or 4 of them, they are phenomenally successful. They do amazing things for military veterans, but also those that are still serving, who are either mentally or physically sick and wounded. And it's been running for 10 years. The first one was in London, and then there was one in Florida, and we've had, Toronto, where he first introduced Meghan to the world. I remember being there as she walked into that court in Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. And we've had Sydney. Düsseldorf was the most recent one. You went to that. I didn't get to it. But so he's coming back to mark the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. Now, I'm a big fan of Invictus. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It's an amazing thing. And there's a service at St Paul's Cathedral where a lot of the veterans will be, the people that have helped him on this journey. Harry's going to be there as well. He's going to give a reading at St Paul's Cathedral. Meghan's not coming with him, so no Duchess of Sussex. So a couple of things there. While he's here, is he going to see his dad?
This is the thing.
We're
not going to be reporting on. We're not really going to be talking about the Invictus Games ceremony. We're all going to be asking, is he meeting his father? Is he meeting his brother?
His brother, yeah. And I mean, last time, and I think it did strike everyone. It told you everything you needed to know about William and Harry's relationship. He rushed over here to see the King after he announced his cancer diagnosis. Now, we all thought he was rushing over within 12 hours of the announcement. He might have found out, he probably did find out 3 or 4 days before us. But anyway, he came pretty much on the day or day after of the cancer announcement, was here for 24, 36 hours, did not see his brother. Now, you would have thought that the two brothers, whatever their differences, would have been able to get together and say, Dad's just told the world he's got cancer. You've come all the way over from California to see him. Let's go and have a chat about how we can put our own difficulties to one side. Did they? No, they didn't. So I think that's the other big question is now we've had this, and since then, obviously, Kate, in that video saying that she is also being treated for cancer. Is that a moment for Harry and William to kind of, be the big boys and just put all the stuff to one side and say, look, shall we just get together for everyone's sake and have a chat?
Well, they're going to be busy. So we're told the King and William are going to be busy next week. There's a couple of jobs, but we need to wait and find out, are they going to be too busy to meet Harry? Because Harry's going to have a bundle of jobs on next week.
Yeah, and he's not here for a long period of time, is he? He's only here for a couple of days and he's off to Nigeria, where incidentally Meghan is going to Nigeria, we've been told, but she's not at the St Paul's Cathedral service. What I haven't been able to work out yet, and it might come out in due course, is whether Meghan's going to be in the UK at all, because I'd imagine she'd have to could fly via London to get to Nigeria. So they're telling us that no, she's not going to be at St Paul's Cathedral, but they're not saying anything to us when we say, well, is she going to be in the UK at all? Yeah. And then you get like silence back from them. So that remains to be seen. But if she's here, I mean, for example, where do they stay? They don't have Frogmore Cottage anymore. They've given that back to the Crown Estate. Will William and Kate put them up in one of their spare rooms? Highly unlikely, I think we'd all agree. But I think the key point is, I'm sure the King will make time for him. Apparently last time when he came over, the King did have to sort of rearrange his plans. He was going off to Sandringham. He had to sort of delay his helicopter movements and all the rest of it to see Harry, even though it was only for about half an hour. But at least they did get to see each other.
Well, last time, my understanding was, obviously, that the King had been having a lot of treatment, and so he couldn't be surrounded by lots of strangers or someone that flies 5,000 miles on a crowded aeroplane from another country, you know. So the doctors were like, well, you can't spend all this time with the King. They don't have the excuse this time. I mean, they can say that he's got a busy diary, but the kind of...
Yeah, but given how many members of the public he met the other day, or even outside, the crowds, although they're normally people who live on the Windsor estate, aren't they? But the crowds outside the Easter service, he met all of them, so they can't say that about Harry. So clearly his doctors are happy that his immunity is much better now than it was. And you do, I mean, I was one of the cancer patients I was speaking to at the hospital the other day saying, you do have this sort of dip when you just first have your chemo, when your immunity is very low, you can't see anybody, and then, you get better again. So it depends, again, we don't know the detail of the King's treatment. It depends whether Harry's visit coincides with an up or a down on the King's risk level. But you kind of think he would see his dad, wouldn't you, given everything that's going on? I mean, you remember that interview that Harry did with, I think it was ABC News, at the Invictus event on the ski slopes in Canada. And he said, look, my diary will bring me back to the UK or through the UK. Clearly he was referring to this at the time. And he would see his father.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would, I think Sun readers particularly would like Harry to kind of reconcile with his family, but I think they would maybe expect Harry to apologise or do some kind of,
The difficulty is, you remember last time that they went to St Paul's Cathedral, which was for the Queen, the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee, they got booed. A lot of people said on Twitter, no, you're making it up, you royal correspondents are, fabricating the story. Absolutely not. We heard the boos for them. We also heard the boos for Boris Johnson at the time as well, who was highly unpopular over Partygate and stuff. We should be clear, there are also people cheering for them, but there were definitely boos at St Paul's Cathedral. So going back there, I can see why Meghan may not wish to accompany Harry for that particular visit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Why isn't Meghan coming? Because I know it's Archie's birthday 2 or 3 days before. She used that excuse for the coronation that she couldn't come, so maybe she's having a big birthday party. But as you point out, she is going to Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly. And that probably tells you what you need to know about Meghan's thoughts about the UK and what a terrible time she had when she was here. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have said this before that I think she might get booed, but I think that if she does come over, I think the popularity of the pair of them has gone so far south since they've gone to America. Before they went to America, I think people were very sympathetic. The more they've heard their story, people have gradually switched off. But it's easier maybe then for Harry to go see his father, not maybe his brother, but go see his father if Meghan isn't here. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, the relationship's very difficult, isn't it, within that family? And I think, yes, it would be a lot easier if Meghan weren't there. But you know, it is still the King's daughter-in-law. And they still have 2 children who are the King's grandchildren. So you would kind of hope that they could still see each other. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if they did actually bring the kids and they all went to see Grandad, because that would really give him a boost. As much as we said the hospital the other day, I think gave him a massive boost. And funny enough, the Lord Lieutenant of London, the guy who welcomes the King when he gets out of the car, Sir Ken, he was telling me that he had cancer in 2016, and you get highs and lows, psychological highs and psychological lows, he said, with cancer. And that visit the other day would have given the King a real boost, a real high, which really helps with your treatment. I kind of would have thought, just imagine if Harry and Meghan came over with the grandchildren, he got to see them, or one of them, for the very first time. So that would be quite something.
Look, take away the news that we write and stuff like that. Just on a family situation, you would like them to be friends and like them to see his grandchildren. You say probably have a huge boost. Absolutely, I think you're right. Totally.
Especially someone who's got cancer, and we don't know his diagnosis, we don't know the severity of it, but having cancer is a very uncertain moment in anyone's life. And I think that would give him a massive boost. Yeah. I
think just my point of view is that possibly without a home, without somewhere to stay, Meghan feels that maybe she can't. This is just my view, that maybe she feels that does she want to take her kids and put them in a hotel?
Again, you say these things like this. Dad's got enough spare rooms. He's got Clarence House, he's got Buckingham Palace. If he's at Sandringham, it's definitely big enough for a couple of guests. Yeah. There's Highgrove. Anywhere that he is, there'll be a big enough room to accommodate Meghan, Harry, and the kids. So let's
look forward to Harry.
Yeah.
We will wait and see if Meghan transfers on the way, but they're going to Nigeria. Yes. We don't know much about this Nigeria trip. No, it's just a defence official, isn't it, or a defence minister in Nigeria has confirmed it. It's about looking at the legacy of the Invictus Games. Why Nigeria? Absolutely no idea, really. But it's a Commonwealth country, as we all know. Yes, but I just think it's really interesting that Meghan is able to join Harry for that Invictus bits of his little tour, but not the London bit. So I read in I think it was a US magazine. I think it was the headline, or it was headline online saying that this was a royal tour. It's not a royal tour, is it, Chris?
I don't think. I mean, Harry and Meghan going anywhere can't really be classed as a royal tour when you've left the royal family and no longer working members. You could call it the Montecito couples tour or something like that. It's just like when they went recently for the Bob Marley film. They went to the Caribbean, and that wasn't a royal tour. That was as a visit by Harry and Meghan. But of course, I'm sure that headline royal tour might appear somewhere when they are pictured in Nigeria.
You mentioned about why they're going there, and I was in Düsseldorf, and at one stage at the Invictus Games in Düsseldorf, a gentleman appeared next to Harry for the wheelchair basketball, and so we turned to Archwell's team and we said, we need to know who's this man, and they said, well, that's the defence minister of Nigeria. He'd actually flown over specifically to
give him a personal invitation.
Well, that's possibly where it came from, but he wanted to sit next to him. I think it was after Harry had made his opening speech, where he said that Meghan was 43% Nigerian. He'd heard that. He'd come over to meet Harry. So I'm assuming that's where it all started.
Yeah, and also fascinating for Meghan to go back to a country where she's got some heritage, and it's going to be really interesting to see what events they do. Thus far, we've been told nothing about the visit other than the fact that it is happening, and she's going to be there. So it could actually, from that point of view, be really interesting for Meghan to go back to a country, through her mother's heritage and find out more about Nigeria. But like I say, Nigeria is one of the countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, I think Denmark, Netherlands, that have all had quite big competitors as part of the Invictus Games. And it's not, it's about servicemen and women serving in whatever capacity, whether they've been injured on tour at home, on duty at home, or whether they've been injured somewhere abroad. So again, I'm a huge fan of the Invictus Games. I think it's done amazing things for some very brave men and women, and clearly Nigeria's got a big visit on its hands.
Yeah, I mean, the visit to Nigeria specifically itself, they've been on royal tours before. We've seen them in Australia, we've seen them in South Africa, but they've had their, they're not allowed to use their HRH titles. They're not allowed to kind of use their royal titles to make money, but we know that they're Harry and Meghan and they're, a Duke and Duchess. What do you think, if any, the pitfalls that they could struggle with when they're in Nigeria? It's a Commonwealth country.
Yep.
People are already calling it a royal tour. Do you have any worries that this could blow up badly, or do they need to be advised in a certain way? I
mean, Nigeria's got its own challenges in terms of its own safety and security in certain parts of the country, and I'm sure they're not going to go to the most dangerous areas, put it that way. I think the Nigerians will do everything they can to make this a really successful tour and kind of put Nigeria on the map. And we must remember that as much as Meghan in this country is a bit of a Marmite character, people love her or people really don't love her, she is likely to be seen very, very differently, in Africa and in a country where she does have some heritage. So I would have thought actually that she will get a huge numbers of crowds coming out to see her because she's a figure on the global stage, and she's coming to their country, and they'll want to put on a red carpet almost as red as the one they might put on for a king or a queen.
Well, that might be the problem. That they do put a red carpet out for a king, queen. That's what I'm concerned about. That they've left the royal family and going on a tour to a Commonwealth country, people might start thinking they're representing the royal family.
Well, if I was in Harry and Meghan's office and I was planning this tour or this trip to Nigeria, I would kind of have a look at what William and Kate did in the Caribbean and not do any of it, and try and actually just do it a bit differently, because of course what they don't want is what that accusation. I know this wasn't William and Kate's intention, but that accusation that there was these white former colonial masters coming to see the people in the colonies. That's definitely something that they want to avoid for a whole host of reasons. So I think if I was planning the tour, I would think very carefully about the optics of it. And you just remember that stuff in the Caribbean, even the stuff that was really unfair, like the picture through the fence, when actually that was just a moment because he rushed over to see some kids. It wasn't that the fact someone put a fence up to keep William and Kate segregated from the locals, because 10 seconds later they were doing handshakes in the street. It was just a particular moment, and that picture misrepresented the tour, but was part of the problems when it comes to optics.
Well, 100%. We were there, and it seemed completely normal. They had a fence there that had been there for decades.
The fence around a football pitch.
Just around a football pitch. Yeah. And they decided to go over, say hi, lovely pictures, but it wasn't until the reaction outside of the bubble, the reporters and everybody that was there, there was kind of
nobody on either side of the fence minded that the fence was there. It was just that people were watching the football match. It was Raheem Sterling there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he also was saying hello to people through the fence as well. He's from Jamaica. But like I said, there were so many issues on that tour. And then we go to the Land Rover and dressed in your sort of, colonial attire, because the actual Jamaican Defence Force had asked William and Kate to do that because the late Queen did it all those years ago, and they did it, where someone in the palace should have gone, I tell you what, these are different times. We don't really do that kind of thing anymore. It just doesn't look right. In fact, many people would argue it never was right. So.
Yeah, well, these are the pitfalls that we'll have to wait and see what happens in Nigeria.
I would have thought, but again, Meghan's mum is black, her father's white, therefore immediately I think it will be easier for them in a country like Nigeria.
Hopefully we'll get some more details at some stage.
Let's hope.
One thing we might see Meghan over here for is the big fans, obviously, of the Invictus Games. She has attended many of them. You've seen her there at the Games. It might be in Birmingham.
Yeah, what do they do if it's in Birmingham? So we were told the other day, weren't we? Yeah. The Invictus Games, the final two for, I can't remember what year, 2027?
Oh, it's every 2 years, isn't it? So it's going to be 2027.
27. The Invictus Games is going to be in, drumroll, Birmingham or Washington, DC. So it's either going to be in the UK or America. If it's in the UK, I mean, again, you've got all the same problems coming back, unless this family is able to resolve all those differences between now and the Invictus Games. So,
well, the 2014 one, the first one, William, Charles and Camilla. Kate couldn't attend. I think she had morning sickness with Charlotte, I think.
Right.
But they all attended and they were there at the opening ceremony.
I'm going to ask you the Latin word for the morning sickness.
It's going to cause all sorts and lots of diplomatic problems if it is held in Birmingham. Going over.
Well, again, you're going to rerun all those all the problems that we've got kind of next week, which is just one small, an hour-long service at St Paul's Cathedral, but you're going to run that over a whole 7 days. Harry coming here, will Meghan come here, will she not, will she bring the kids, will they see King, will William go, will he not, will the King go? Lots of issues.
But we know in the royal game, 2 years is a long time. Anything can happen.
A lot could have changed
years.
By then, yeah. They could all be best mates by then, so...
Exactly. Finally, this week, we've seen some photographs from the Waleses.
Yes.
So it was their 13th wedding anniversary.
Yes.
We had a picture of, I think it was taken, it was behind the scenes. We'd never seen
Taken
it
in
before.
2011, wasn't it?
Taken,
and one from their sort of photograph album, presumably it's quite a big album compared to most people's, and that was an unseen photograph.
This harks back to a happier time. I was speaking to other reporters reporting at the time, and they were saying this was almost like a golden era when William and Catherine got married. It kind of like just transports you back to a time when everyone was a little bit happier, celebrating.
It was kind of
out the
very
street.
peaceful then, wasn't it, compared to how it is now? I mean, 2011 and 2012, the run up to the London Olympics, there was a kind of warm glow around the whole country. William and Kate just got married. The whole eyes of the world were on. The Queen in 2012 had her, forget now, which one was it? The 60th Golden Jubilee, and everything was just pretty special, wasn't it?
It's nice to be reminded sometimes that there are happy times, where people are friendly and together.
Yeah, and actually, William and Harry were still good mates then. He was the best man. It was that kind of sort of perfect wedding. Actually, I was looking at some of the pictures of it the other day, and of their engagement interview as well. And you often get criticised on social media. Do you call her Kate or Catherine? Well, I watched the engagement interview, and the whole way through it, William calls his wife to be Kate. Well, but also known as Catherine, also known as the Princess of Wales.
Well, I get criticised in the YouTube comments on this show for calling her Kate.
Right.
And I try to call her Catherine. But the sub-editors on The Sun, it has to be short to fit into the headline, so it's Kate. But the other picture...
When she becomes Queen, you're going to call her Queen Kate or Queen Catherine?
I don't know, it's difficult, because I sometimes call Camilla.
Yeah.
It's Queen Camilla, the Queen, and then the late Queen. It gets very confusing.
It does get a bit confusing. Yeah. And actually, like we used to call Prince Philip, and he was the consort. So
I dropped the third off Charles. I now just call. I don't do the third. I just call him King Charles.
The King or King Charles. Yeah.
But
actually, it does. Funny enough, when you're writing or broadcasting, it does now feel a bit odd just to call him Charles.
Yeah.
And you kind of do. Like we'd never have said Elizabeth for the late Queen. So things do move on and things change. But I mean, we've all kind of accepted, and that's one of the greatest achievements, I think, of this relatively new reign is that everyone's kind of accepted this Queen consort. And it wasn't that long ago. In fact, it was only on the weekend of her sort of accession day, her platinum anniversary, that the late Queen said that she would like Camilla to be known as Queen consort when the time comes. Looking back, I think the Queen knew then that the time was indeed coming, and that was something that she had to set up to ensure a smooth transition.
Well, she went from, she went a huge transition. She's now Queen. She's now known as Queen Consort. And then the final photograph is Princess Charlotte.
Yes.
Just one name, Charlotte.
Charlotte.
We just call her Charlotte.
Yes.
Yeah. These pictures now come with a little bit of pressure from Kensington Palace. It's just dropped for us as we're filming, but we believe it was taken by the Princess of Wales herself a couple of days ago.
In Windsor again, just like they did with Louis a couple of days ago, and I'm sure they will do with George when he's got his birthday coming up. So Louis's birthday's on St George's Day, isn't it? Charlotte's is today as we're recording, and Prince George's is coming up soon. So yes. A really nice picture. They say it was taken by Kate, and after all the Mother's Day furore about her photoshopping, and she admitted that she did that, of course, I think they just have to be sure now that it was in the last few days, it was in Windsor, it was taken by Kate, and didn't they say when the Louis picture came out, it is unedited?
It did, yeah.
So, didn't say that today, but they did for Louis's one.
Well, I think we should just, that the Sun's taken a certain stance where we kind of said about the Princess of Wales, let's just, she edited that picture. She was under pressure. It was a lovely picture. Let's just give her a bit of a break and enjoy these photographs. We enjoy their lives. So let's just
yeah. And actually, just looking at that photograph on one of your front pages from a few days ago, that must have been Saturday was it? That paper was the new picture of the King and Queen, which they said was released in advance of the coronation, the anniversary of which is coming up, of course. But I thought it was a really nice picture. They just do look really happy together, don't they? That again. These pictures I think are really, really special, and we got another one today of Princess Charlotte.
Excellent. Well, Chris, Shippy, Shippers, whatever you want to call you, you've been a star. Thanks for coming on. That's all we got time, but we've covered a lot. I think we've covered everything that's happened that could possibly have happened in the last week while we've been chatting. Thanks very much for coming along. You enjoy yourself?
Loved it. Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Will you come back?
If you'll invite me. If no one watches, then you might actually think, well, I'm not having him back. So
I'm definitely having you back. Thanks, Chris. Thanks. Appreciate it. Well, thank you for watching. As we were just saying, we went through a lot of information there, so I hope you enjoyed yourself and found it informative. We would like to hear your comments. We'd read your comments, so please comment below. And if you like this content and you want more, then please click subscribe. Thanks very much for watching.